Bowing to public and political pressure, the former post office boss apologises and surrenders her CBE.
Paula Vennells has got the CBE.
Joking.
Paula Vennells has been widely criticised for her role in the Horizon IT scandal. Hundreds of sub-postmasters were wrongly prosecuted on her watch, many losing their livelihoods, facing public disgrace and even jail.
She should be made to suffer what we did, be prosecuted and let the law take its course.
It seems to have taken a TV drama to properly set the wheels of justice in motion. And now Parliament's calling for fast-track exonerations for all of those wrongly charged. But in the meantime, too many are still suffering. Also tonight, it is confirmed 2023 was the hottest on record, climbing ever closer to the limit agreed in the Paris Accord. After the death of little Awa, new proposals forcing landlords to repair poor housing. But how effective will they really be? How AI is stepping into the battle against litter bugs. In future, you may think twice about chucking that rubbish out of your car window. And
in what many are already calling her revenge dress.
Your chance to own a piece of royal history, or near enough. Costumes and props from the Crown are set to be auctioned off for charity.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. The former boss of the Post Office has handed back her CBE and issued an apology to hundreds of sub-postmasters and mistresses wrongly convicted in the Horizon IT scandal. Paula Vennells said she is truly sorry for the devastation caused to victims and their families. And she was chief executive when they were prosecuted using incorrect accounting data. Vennells was under growing pressure after the ITV drama Mr Bates versus the Post Office highlighted the long-running miscarriage of justice. Well, ministers are now looking at how to exonerate fully all of those wrongly branded criminals. Our political correspondent Shihab Khan has the latest.
He is on his list.
God's sake, come on, turn it off. Details, man, come to bed.
Paula Vennells has got the CBE.
Joking.
It is one of the greatest miscarriages of justice in recent history. Yet, some of those at the very top of the Post Office received honours for their service. But since the ITV drama, pressure has been mounting on Paula Vennells, with more than 1 million people signing a petition to have her stripped of her CBE. Today, she released a statement and said, "I have listened and I confirm that I returned my CBE with immediate effect. I am truly sorry for the devastation caused to the sub-postmasters and their families whose lives were torn apart by being wrongly accused and wrongly prosecuted." For Ian Warren, a former sub-postmaster who says his life was ruined by this scandal, this is just one small step in the right direction.
I think she has made a very wise decision to hand it back herself. She should be made to suffer what we did, be prosecuted and let the law take its course.
Ian still hasn't been compensated, and those who have worked on getting sub-postmasters justice are aware more needs to be done. Do you think returning the CBE is enough?
No. There were so many questions that were going unanswered, that questions that MPs were putting to her, and she either didn't know the answers when she should have been finding them out, or she did know the answers and was not telling them to us.
While some sub-postmasters have had their conviction quashed, there are hundreds still waiting, which was part of the focus in the Commons today. Former senior cabinet ministers asked the Justice Secretary to explore ways to speed up the process.
We can do something good, Mr Speaker, together, if the Justice Secretary would bring a simple bill to quash all 800 immediately.
The suggestions he made is receiving active consideration. I expect to be able to make further announcements shortly.
But there are questions over ethics and whether Parliament can or should intervene in an independent judiciary this way. But for those who have regularly raised the issue, only one thing matters.
If you're a postmaster and you've been convicted of something, you want a declaration of your own innocence. You don't just want somebody saying, well, you know, it doesn't matter anymore, which is what a royal pardon does. So we have to find a mechanism which sorts it out in a way that people get their reputation back.
While that remains the ambition across the political spectrum, when that will be done and how are questions that still don't have answers. And we will need those answers soon because public pressure continues to mount. This ITV drama has energised both the public and politicians who seem very keen to act. That's why Number 10, I'm told, are very keen to ensure that these convictions are overturned as quickly as possible, but doing it in the right way is the challenge. That's why the Justice Secretary has been meeting with senior figures within the judiciary because they do not want to be seen to be undermining the legal process. For the victims of this, however, the answers can't come soon enough as they wait for the justice that they've been hoping for quite some time.
Shiab Khan at Westminster, thank you. Now, scientists today confirmed that 2023 was the hottest year on record, and more worrying still, it came close to breaching the limits set by the Paris Climate Agreement. Data from the Copernicus satellite showed that both air and sea temperatures reached new highs, causing deadly droughts, heat waves and floods. Now, it is partly caused by the El Niño effect, which sees oceans warm up, but experts say that it's the man-made emissions which are really the biggest factor, as our science correspondent Martin Stew reports.
From devastating wildfires in Greece to deadly floods in Libya. The more our climate changes, the more likely it is we see extremes. 2023 saw heat waves and drought right across the globe.
Climate change is not a phenomenon of the future. It's here and now, and it's hitting those most vulnerable in every society hardest.
Last year was the hottest on record, beating the previous warmest, 2016, by 0.17 degrees Celsius, which is huge when you consider it is a global average spread over an entire year. It's also very close to breaching the limit set by the Paris Climate Agreement to keep global temperature rises below 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. 2023 was 1.48 degrees above that. And for the first time ever, every single day, global temperatures were at least a degree higher than the 19th century. Plus, there were 2 days, the 17th and 18th of November, where temperatures were more than 2 degrees warmer. This is the real-world impact. Floodwaters from Storm Daniel reached the roof of Petros's house in Greece. It was like a tsunami, he says. In fact, so devastating was the damage, 90% of his neighbours voted to abandon the village, which has stood for 900 years. Petros is tired of living in fear. El Niño, a natural phenomenon which sees changing wind directions warm the Pacific Ocean, has contributed to the heat. But scientists say the biggest driver is greenhouse gases. Carbon dioxide and methane emissions rose again last year to a new high.
We need to adapt to this new climatological normal, and the reality is when we look back on 2023 in 5 or 10 years' time, it will be cooler than our future climate. So we need to adapt and mitigate to make sure we can get to net zero as quickly as possible.
We also saw record high sea temperatures and record low levels of Antarctic sea ice. As for the UK, a cooler summer meant it was only our second hottest year. But we didn't avoid the floodwaters of Storm Babette. And 2024 is already shaping up to be even more challenging.
Well, Martin, that's a bit gloomy, isn't it? So we can expect the same direction of travel coming in the coming year?
Well, yes, we're not expecting emissions to go down. In fact, we're expecting them to go up. And the impact of El Niño will probably be stronger this year. As a result, the Met Office say it's a very good chance we're going to see temperatures higher than last year, and a very good chance we'll break that 1.5 limit as well. Now, that doesn't mean we've breached the Paris Agreement, because that's got to be a 20-year average, not 1 year, but it's an ominous precedent.
It really is. I think I know the answer to this. Are we doing enough to control climate change?
Well, I mean, no is a short answer, according to climate scientists, but there have been some steps in the right direction. The COP climate conference was last month. There, nations agreed to transition towards moving away from fossil fuels. They also talked about tripling renewables and also doubling energy efficiency. The trouble is those things are not legally binding, and what we need to see now is action to follow those words.
OK, Martin Stew, thank you. The Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, has revealed that 2 British hostages are still being held in Gaza. The former Prime Minister was being quizzed by MPs. It comes as US Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Israel for talks with the country's leaders there. Well, our correspondent John Ray is in Tel Aviv for us tonight. John, what do we know then about these hostages?
Well, these 2 British citizens are among what is ranked to be now 136 people still being held in Gaza. Lord Cameron wouldn't even reveal today, perhaps couldn't reveal today, whether they are indeed still alive. And of course, no hostage has been released since that short-lived ceasefire back in November. The Americans tonight are saying that once again they are intensely focused on the hostage issue. As for Gaza, well, the bombardment has continued today with the devastating consequences we have seen now for the past several months. And that drew this potentially significant, certainly contentious concession from Lord Cameron that Israel might be breaking international law in the conduct of this war. This is what he had to say.
Am I worried that Israel has taken action that might be in breach of international law because this particular premises has been bombed or whatever? Yes, of course I'm worried, and that's why I consult the Foreign Office lawyers when giving this advice on arms exports.
Have you received legal advice which says that Israel is in breach of international humanitarian law?
The short answer to that is no.
Well, that was Lord Cameron, Foreign Secretary, of course. But to return to the US, Antony Blinken is there again. What's his main priority this time?
Well, Mr. Blinken is still briefing the media after what I think has been a very tough day of talks. He's been saying how focused he is on getting more aid into Gaza, on de-escalating this crisis. But Mary, the only concession that publicly he has shared with us tonight is that a United Nations delegation will be allowed into the northern part of Gaza, where the fighting is ebbing away, to assess the damage, to look at how Palestinians might be allowed back to their homes. But as he has just said in the last few minutes, that is not going to happen overnight.
Okay. John Ray in Tel Aviv, thank you. Here, the Welsh Government has promised action today in the wake of what it called a repugnant and reprehensible pattern of behaviour at South Wales Fire Service. It's demanding answers about why the chief fire officer was given a £12,000 pay rise, even as a review took place into serious failings there. Last week, that independent review concluded that the service had tolerated the abuse and harassment of women, as well as racism and homophobia, following an ITV News investigation. An inquest has heard that a teenager was seen to push a 13-year-old boy into a river shortly before he drowned. Christopher Capessa died after allegedly being pushed into the River Canon in Rhondda Canon Taff in 2019. Other children jumped in to help, but he could not be saved. The hearing continues. Junior doctors in England could be balloted for further strike action in their long-running pay dispute. The British Medical Association urged the government to come forward with a credible offer to end industrial action. It came as medics ended 6 consecutive days of strikes, the longest in NHS history. Well, tomorrow we should find out what impact that had on hospital operations and indeed waiting times. Our health correspondent Rebecca Barry heard from staff and patients at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in South London.
So we're trying to find some space to step them down.
Consultant Fred Ahonusu has just worked 7 days straight, covering his junior doctor colleagues. Their strike has just finished, but there's rarely any let-up in the NHS. And by 10 o'clock this morning, the emergency department at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in South East London is full.
I feel relieved that it's over.
And how did it go? How did you cope?
I think we coped well because we planned. It's been a very stressful period, not really sustainable.
Every bed in the A&E ward is now taken, so patients are being treated in overspill areas.
I mean, it's never very nice sleeping on a very uncomfortable bed in a corridor.
Brian spent the night in a corridor on the ward, but still supports the doctors on strike.
I don't agree with unions, never have done. I don't agree with strikes, but I think theirs is more than justified.
Even if it means patients like you having to potentially wait longer or have operations and appointments delayed?
Yes.
78-year-old Clement has a terminal lung disease and was brought in by ambulance overnight.
The people on the front line, the nurses, the doctors and that, they're wonderful. I think they should be given more money than... The government's just been, you know, it's just been awkward.
In this trust alone, 3,000 patients have had operations or appointments cancelled. At one point here, in the maternity unit, they were at risk of being dangerously short-staffed. So a junior doctor was granted rare permission to cross the picket line and come back to work to protect patients.
It's junior doctor Victoria's first day back. She says they deserve the 35% pay rise they're asking for.
The personal responsibility that is required of you, as well as the emotional tax, the physical tax on your body, and the intellectual stimulation. And I just don't think that £15 an hour for a doctor to live in London is sustainable.
Are you prepared to keep on striking until you get what you want?
Yes.
No more junior doctor strikes are currently planned in England, but today the British Medical Association announced they're preparing for more.
Are you dreading potential further strike action?
I think another set of strikes would be really tough for everyone. I mean, we've had 40 days now of industrial action over the past 12 months. Has put an enormous strain on everyone.
Junior doctors say the government must come forward with a credible offer to stop more walkouts. The government says their demands are not reasonable or affordable. Rebecca Barry, ITV News, South London.
Well, Rebecca's here. I mean, the impact of the strike, presumably it will have been really substantial.
Well, we won't know the full impact of this strike across England until tomorrow, when the NHS release the official number of operations and appointments that have been cancelled. But NHS leaders say the true impact will be felt for weeks and months to come, because it's feared that many people would have just avoided going to hospital altogether during the strike, and that could create bigger problems down the line. Plus, this dispute is far from over. Today, the British Medical Association said that the government only seems to listen when they have a mandate for strike action. That current mandate ends at the end of February. So today they say they are preparing to extend that. That'll mean balloting their members for potential future industrial action later in the year. That's something that no one wants.
No, indeed. Rebecca Barry, thank you. Well, there's plenty more still to come in the ITV news, including a coroner reveals the cause of death of Sinead O'Connor. Boeing, facing serious safety questions, could loose screws be behind concerns over the MAX 9 aircraft? And caught on camera how new AI technology is helping to clamp down on littering. Well, we will have all the details after this short break. Join us then. Hello again, welcome back. The father of 2-year-old Awab Ishak, who died after becoming ill at his housing association flat, has welcomed proposals for a strict time frame for landlords to fix housing problems. Awab died in December 2020 after prolonged exposure to mould in his home in Rochdale. Under the plans, hazards would have to be investigated within 14 days, with a timescale on repairs too. But it is far from clear whether the measures would actually work, or indeed who would take action if they didn't. Our North of England correspondent Rachel Townsend reports.
He has become the face of Britain's social housing shame. 2-year-old Awab Ishak, who spent his final months coughing and wheezing in his damp and mouldy home. In February, his parents told ITV News about their ongoing heartache.
We would not wish this pain on anybody.
Today, Awab's father backed proposals in his son's name that will force social housing landlords to investigate hazards within 14 days and start fixing them within a further 7 days and make emergency repairs within 24 hours. And if they don't comply, they could be taken to court. The Ishaq's barrister says the government must also play their part.
It's all good, this consultation taking place. It's all good, Awab's law coming into force. But it's also imperative that landlords have the resources and are given the resources so that they can promptly rectify matters in the manner that Awab's law intends.
And this was completely drenched.
And it's families like the Masokis who could benefit. They've lived under a leaking roof for 4 months, but L&Q Homes in Southwark, who insist they're working hard to put things right, still haven't fixed it.
I sent endless emails. My wife and I had to live in the living room for a little while. My son had to also move out. We had to use portable heaters to try and dry out the walls. The smell was unbearable, absolutely unbearable.
Well, the Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, says these measures will mean that landlords can no longer dither and delay when rectifying people's homes. Indeed, numerous inspections were made at Awab's flat here in Rochdale, yet no repairs were ever completed. Under Awab's law, repairs must be completed within a reasonable time period or alternative accommodation must be found. None of this happened for Awab, who died 8 days after his 2nd birthday, a birthday he spent in a home not fit for human habitation. Rachel Townsend, ITV News, Rochdale.
The mother of a 21-year-old woman who took her own life behind bars has told an inquiry how she seemed petrified of other prisoners the day before she was found dead. Katie Allen died at Polmont Young Offenders Institution in Falkirk in June. Her suicide there and that of 16-year-old William Lindsay are the subject of a fatal accident inquiry. Well, our Scotland correspondent Peter Smith is at Falkirk Sheriff Court. Peter, what evidence was revealed today?
Well, we know these were 2 young people. Both took their own lives, both at the same young offenders institution, Polmont Young Offenders Institution, and both within a matter of months of each other. And it's taken 5 years to get to this fatal accident inquiry. Both of their families believe these deaths were preventable. We can see a picture here, Katie Allen on the left. She was 21 years old, a university student. She was serving a short-term sentence. William Lindsay on the right, he was just 16 years old. Their families have said that there was clear evidence of an immediate risk to their lives, immediate risk of self-harming, and they believe that the warning signs were ignored. And it was Katie Allen's mum who gave evidence today to the fatal accident inquiry. She spoke about how her daughter was bullied, berated, and being told night after night to kill herself. She said she spoke to a prison warden the last time she visited Katie. She said that her biggest regret in her life is that she left without getting answers because that night Katie took her life. Here's what she said after the hearing today.
Katie lost between 60 and 80% of her hair. She was covered in self-harming marks. She was covered in eczema. She had weight loss and she was acutely distressed. What really else would need to have happened for that box suicide risk to be ticked?
Now, a Scottish Prison Service spokesperson has said that the loss of any person in its care is devastating and that everyone who enters custody is assessed to identify what support is needed. The Crown Office has acknowledged that the wait for these proceedings has been too long, and they say an inquiry will allow a full public airing of all the evidence. This fatal accident inquiry is expected to last for 3 weeks.
Peter Smith, Falkirk, thank you. 34-year-old Gabriel Attal has become France's youngest and first openly gay Prime Minister. The former Education Minister replaces Elizabeth Bourne, who resigned following recent political turmoil over an immigration law that strengthens the government's ability to deport foreigners. President Macron will be seeking a fresh start to the rest of his term with European Parliament elections in June. And in Washington, an appeals court has questioned Donald Trump's claim that he's immune from criminal charges for plotting to overturn the 2020 election result. The former president's legal team argue his actions fell within his official duties. A coroner has said that the singer, Sinead O'Connor, died of natural causes. The 56-year-old was found unresponsive in her South London home last July. Ian Woods is outside Southwark Coroner's Court. Ian, what did the coroner say today?
Well, soon after the body of Sinead O'Connor was found at her apartment in Herne Hill, the police said that they were not treating the death as suspicious. In other words, they didn't believe that anyone else was involved. But a post-mortem was still carried out to check if there were any unusual circumstances which then would have necessitated an inquest being held. That won't happen now because the coroner's office has issued a statement today confirming that Sinead died of natural causes but giving no further medical details. Her death at the age of just 56 prompted a huge response from fans in Ireland and right around the world. And that's not just because of her music and one immediately thinks of her big international hit, Nothing Compares to You, but also because of her often controversial social activism. For example, in speaking out against the Catholic Church for its role in many child abuse cases. But in death, the Dublin-born singer was praised by the Irish political leadership. And today came the announcement that her life and her music is going to be celebrated alongside the Pogues lead singer Shane MacGowan, who died last month. A special concert is going to be held at New York's famous Carnegie Hall in March.
OK. Ian Woods at Southwark Crown Court. Thank you. You're watching the ITV Evening News. It's pretty much exactly 7 o'clock, and here's what's still to come on the programme. The shocking findings of how many plastic particles are in your average bottle of water. Just how dangerous are they for our health? End of the Royal Road. All 6 seasons of The Crown's props and costumes go on display.
And if you're one who likes to make a grand entrance, find out how you could own this replica gold state coach, a piece of TV history. You will need your own horses to pull it, though.
Also reunited after 12 days, the lucky lost pup found by a drone.
And after a bitterly cold day, we're heading into another frosty night. Just how long is this freeze set to last? All those answers later in the programme.
Well, before all that, a special report on how artificial intelligence is being harnessed to crack down on motorists who litter our motorways and streets. 2 million pieces of litter every day are dropped in the UK. By volume, drink cans and bottles make up 70% of all litter and are the biggest issue. It's estimated more than 2 million small mammals die each and every year as a result of getting trapped in discarded drinks containers. It costs local authorities millions of pounds a year to clean up the rubbish we drop, and now they are fighting back. Cameras using the latest AI technology are helping to track down the criminals responsible. Pablo Taylor saw how they work.
It's one of the most common crimes in the UK. Littering, much of it done from vehicles, cost Britain more than £800 million last year. Whilst these individuals were caught on camera, the vast majority of offenders go unpunished, creating streams of rubbish alongside our roads. But could artificial intelligence be the solution? Entrepreneur Andrew Kemp has spent the last few years developing technology to turn ordinary CCTV cameras into ones capable of identifying littering. It's already being trialled by councils up and down the country.
We've got a CCTV camera here, and we've got our software technology that's specifically designed to detect the action of littering from vehicles. There's a large section of society who don't believe that there's any deterrent, that they're not going to be caught, so they can just simply get away with it. So this technology will hopefully give local authorities the powers and the capability to do that.
To demonstrate how this technology works, I've agreed to dump a few items of litter out of my car, and I'm told this camera can pick up even the smallest bits of rubbish. Luckily for me, this was just a test, but if it was for real, I'd have easily been caught and could be facing a fine of up to £500. For now, it often falls on volunteers to clean up the mess left by drivers, and these litter pickers say they'd appreciate any extra help from AI cameras, even if it meant more surveillance.
I actually think that's a good idea. I'm not into Big Brother with cameras everywhere and everything. However, litter is wrong. It is not nice, and it should be. You should be caught out for it. So yeah, I have no problem with that.
Pablo, just look at the state here. It's absolutely covered in litter.
But there are others who say we shouldn't need AI to solve this problem, and it's decades of inaction from the top which has left Britain with a rubbish reputation.
How does the UK compare to other countries when it comes to the problem of litter?
The UK compares terribly. We argue that we're the most litter-ridden country in the Western world. When I've been to countries myself, like New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, Canada, these countries are all pristine compared to Britain. The government needs to speak to people like ourselves and other organisations who really care about this. There's too much greenwashing going on. There's too much speaking, too much talking, not enough action. And that's what we need to see.
For its part, the government says it is taking action and has already trebled the maximum fine for littering. But the turn towards AI suggests this is a war it isn't winning, and one which desperately requires an extra pair of eyes. Pablo Taylor, ITV News.
Well, now let's get an update on what's making the news tonight. The former boss of the Post Office, Paula Vennells, says she is handing back her CBE with immediate effect in the face of mounting pressure over the Horizon IT scandal. Following an ITV drama, more than 1.2 million people had signed a petition demanding Ms Vennells be stripped of her honour. 2023 has been confirmed as the hottest year on record, driven by climate change and the El Niño weather event. Almost every day since July has seen a new global air temperature high for the time of the year. And in the last few minutes, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Israel has agreed to allow UN monitors into Gaza. He was speaking at a press conference in Tel Aviv after holding talks with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, a passenger on board an Alaska Airlines flight which lost a door panel in midair has described her absolutely terrifying ordeal. Kelly Bartlett said a teenage boy had his shirt ripped off as the aircraft suddenly depressurised in the incident last week. It's thought it's only luck that the boy wasn't killed. He and other passengers still had their seatbelts on as the jet had only just taken off. And it was also revealed that other aircraft may have loose bolts believed to have caused the panel to fall off. Neil Connery has more.
A gaping hole in the Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 9 is the focus into how a panel known as a plug blew out at 16,000 feet. Inspections of the same type of planes have found the plug's bolts need additional tightening. Alaska Airlines has also found some loose hardware on some of its MAX 9s. The plane involved in Friday's emergency had shown warning lights over cabin depressurization on 3 previous flights. One passenger spoke of the blowout's impact on a boy named Jack.
I didn't know why he didn't have a shirt on, because his shirt got sucked off of his body when the panel blew out because of the pressure. And it was his seatbelt that kept him in his seat and saved his life. And there he was next to me, and I could see his skin was red and he had some cuts on him. So I just didn't understand what was happening.
The plug panel which blew out has now been found by a teacher in his back garden.
My heart did start beating a little faster at that point because I thought, oh my goodness, people have been looking for this all weekend and it looks like it's in my backyard.
Investigators believe the plug panel's bolts may hold the key.
We found that both guide tracks on the plug were fractured. We have not yet recovered the 4 bolts that restrain it from its vertical movement, and we have not yet determined if they existed there.
With 171 of their planes grounded, for Boeing, the questions and scrutiny are growing. £9.5 billion was wiped off the company's value yesterday. Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft were involved in crashes in Indonesia in 2018 and 4 months later in Ethiopia after a problem with autopilot. The search for answers into the Alaska Airlines emergency is being closely watched by the industry. Neil Connery, ITV News.
Researchers have found that bottled water contains hundreds of thousands of microscopic pieces of plastic and that we swallow them whenever we drink it. A study found 240,000 particles called nanoplastics per litre. It could have profound implications for human health. And Ellie Pitt joins me now. It sounds terrible. How much of a worry is it?
Well, Mary, I mean, It depends how much bottled water you drink ultimately, but there are concerns tonight about the potential impact that this could have on human health. The findings are of a result of significant steps forward in the technology that's used to detect tiny plastic particles. Previous studies have been able to look at microplastics, which are either visible or under a microscope can be seen. But the scientists in the USA have used lasers to detect even smaller nanoplastics. They tested 3 brands of bottled water and found on average they contain 240,000 plastic particles per litre of the bottled water. 10% were microplastics, but 90% were these tiny nanoplastics. Now, they believe some of that plastic may come from the bottle itself that it's contained in, and the other might, ironically, some of it might come from the filters that are used to purify the water before it's bottled. Now, the issue is that these nanoplastics are so small, scientists understand that they can go through our small intestines into our bloodstreams, and now they're looking at whether they can even get into our cells and the impact that might have on our health. Those research studies are very much early stages and no long-term studies done yet.
OK, fascinating and frightening in equal measure. Ellie Pitt, thank you. Now, unusually, heavy snow has caused travel disruption on the Channel Islands. Jersey Airport was closed for several hours this morning, and more snow apparently is on the way. Well, Alexandra Spicely is in Jersey for us tonight. Alexandra, this is pretty rare, isn't it? Just how rare is it?
Well, incredibly so, and that's because the last time the Channel Islands saw snow like this, it was a decade ago. Now, usually the islands are known for their warmer, sunnier climate, but today instead, people woke up to between 2 to 5 centimetres of snow. And as you can see, even the palm trees behind me are still covered. And as you said, it did cause disruption today, with the team at the airport working from 5 o'clock this morning up until 11 to clear the runway. And that saw a number of passengers delayed for up to 5 hours and some flights cancelled altogether. But seeing as it is such a rarity here in the Channel Islands, people really have been making the very, very most of it, with children rushing out of their classrooms on their breaks to go and make snowmen and have snow fights, but also adults too, heading to the beaches with bodyboards, turning them into toboggans instead to make their way down the sand dunes. But we have just recently been told not to expect any more heavy snow here in the Channel Islands. So for now at least, people can pack away their snow gear and put their bodyboards back to proper use.
All right, Alexandra Spicely in Jersey there, thank you. And there will be, of course, a full weather forecast a little bit later in the programme. But next, how fans of the hit Netflix show The Crown can get their hands on props from the drama and help the next generation of filmmakers too. Costumes, including Princess Diana's extraordinary dresses, baubles and even a barbecue are going up for auction, with proceeds funding scholarships for film and TV students. Our entertainment reporter Rishi Davda had a look at The Crown's jewels.
Some are ours, passed down through the family, and some are for sale.
For 6 seasons, even the smallest detail was scrutinised over. Every button on a jacket, each stitch on a dress. The end result, 60 episodes of an exceptionally crafted drama that's won countless awards. But what of the costumes, the props and the sets? Hundreds are now being sold at auction, including this replica, which doesn't unfortunately come with the 8 horses needed to pull it. We're sat in a gold state coach, expected to go for between £30,000 to £50,000. It could obviously be more than that. What sort of buyer is going to be spending their money on something like this?
I mean, that's a question that I've been asked a lot. And, I mean, actually sitting in it, God, I love this. It's so comfortable. There's a lot of interest from international potential buyers. So I can see this, either ending up in a private collection, but maybe even a museum.
In what many are already calling her revenge dress.
The Crown is inspired by real events, so culturally historic moments are replicated decades later on the small screen.
So this is probably one of the top lots in the sale. It's Diana's revenge dress as worn by Elizabeth Debicki. And there's lots of great stories around the revenge dress. So famously, Diana wore it in 1994, at the same week that the story of Charles and Camilla's affair came out in the press. I mean, I would love a celebrity to buy it and then have their own revenge dress moment.
The revenge dress is expected to fetch £12,000 at auction next month. All the money made is going to the National Film and Television School, training the industry's behind-the-scenes stars.
We've talked about a figure of £1 million. If that got raised, we'd be able to support about 100 students to come to the NFTS over the next 20 years. You know, I want to be an editor, I want to be a visual effects artist, I want to be a composer. This scholarship programme will transform the lives of at least 100 people, we hope.
The whole collection will be going on display for the public later this week, including a replica of number 10, which could go for £30,000. The Crown was on our screens for 7 years, but this auction and the money raised means that the show will be helping up-and-coming talent for generations to come. Rishi Davda, ITV News, 10 Downing Street. Sort of.
Well, just time to tell you about a new political podcast we are launching tomorrow. Here's Tom Bradby with the details.
What on earth is going on in British politics? And Anushka is here to make sense of all this. Good luck to you.
Do I even need to ask you a question?
Well, now Robert and Anushka will be talking politics with me every Wednesday as the drama plays out.
Apart from members of his own cabinet, how many people has the Prime Minister sent to Rwanda?
He just simply doesn't have a plan. We'll talk tactics. Everyone is just shooting off their mouths with whatever they want. Is there any strategy at all that you can see?
Discipline is clearly broken down.
When the PM will call an election.
It's not rational for him to go early.
And above all, who will be leading Britain beyond 2024?
When you speak to Conservative strategists, they're not hopeful about a victory. They think it is still possible.
So do join us on ITVX every Wednesday and listen to us talking politics wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, still to come before Emmerdale, a happy homecoming for Ulyss, the dog who spent Christmas stuck in a hedge.
And temperatures are already slipping below freezing. Join me for the very latest national forecast in a couple of minutes.
So me and Alex, both of us will be back after the break. See you then. Hello and welcome back. Time to look at what the weather's got in store for us over the next few days. Alex is here. Well, it's cold. We know that for sure, don't we?
Absolutely. Feeling very wintry, as we saw in the Channel Islands a little earlier. And we still have those cold weather alerts in place until the end of the week. But it has been bitterly cold today. Temperatures have been quite a few degrees below average for this time in January. In fact, across Scotland, it was very cold indeed. Inverness, -3 this afternoon. It should be at around 7 or 8 degrees Celsius. You can see across many other parts of the UK, temperatures sitting around 3-4 degrees Celsius. So feeling very cold, and as you've guessed it, there will be a pretty widespread sharp frost as we head into this evening and overnight. And that is all down to this colder air mass that we've got over the UK at the moment. Let's actually run the sequence as we head through the course of this week. You can actually see some less cold air, I would say, coming in for the middle part of this week. So temperatures recovering a little bit, but you can see as we head towards the end of this week, creeping into the weekend, we're going to see more cold air plunging southwards. So it's going to be a cold end to the weekend and a very chilly start to next week indeed. Let's take a quick look, though, where we do have those wintry flurries a little earlier. As you saw, Channel Islands certainly waking up to a dusting of snow and some disruption there. This was the scene in Kent earlier this afternoon. Still some snow on the rooftops there. And also, well, there's no such thing as the wrong type of weather, just the wrong type of clothes. I'll let you make up your mind as to whether these shorts were appropriate in Kent as well. Let's take a look at the forecast then and see if shorts are in the forecast.
This unexpected warm winter sun could disappear by lunchtime. Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
Well, it certainly isn't going to be T-shirt weather as we head through the next few days. However, it is going to be on the drier side, and of course, that is pretty good news with some flood warnings and flood alerts still very much in place from the rain that we've had over the last couple of weeks. But as you can see, high pressure stays with us. The windier conditions are going to be a little further south, but they will start to ease as we head through the next couple of days or so. As for this evening and overnight, well, it's going to be very cold in places. As you saw, the temperature didn't get above freezing, but they are going to dip below freezing as we head through this evening and overnight, even in some towns and cities. So you can expect a fairly widespread sharp frost, but out in rural parts is where it is going to be that bit colder. You can see here up and down the country, -4, -5, -6, maybe even colder across some parts of Scotland. So actually watch out for a few icy stretches first thing tomorrow. Anywhere where we've seen a little bit of precipitation through today, there have been a few showers knocking around, and they have been of a wintry nature at times. But as we head into tomorrow, there will be a good deal of sunshine yet again for many southern parts of Wales and also much of England. But you can see cloud cover will start to feed in as we head through the afternoon time, and that's going to be a bit of a feature as we head through the next couple of days. A little more in the way of cloud cover across some northeastern parts of the UK, but you can see temperatures do make a little bit of a recovery. Still certainly a chill in the air, but as we head towards the weekend, it's set to turn that bit colder yet again.
Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
So there you have it, another cold and frosty night to come. As I say, up early tomorrow morning, I'd watch out for just a few icy stretches in places.
OK, Alex, thank you. And finally tonight, how a drone helped reunite a missing dog with his desperately worried owner. Ulis ran off during a walk in Bedfordshire shortly before Christmas. 12 days later, his owner still couldn't find him and called in the help of charity Drone to Home. Well, thankfully, they found the wire-haired Vizsla in the nick of time, and now Ulis's owner is helping to raise funds for the charity's vital work, as Chloe Keedy reports.
Ulis is a dog that's scared of the dark, and who can blame him? He's only just made it home after spending 11 long, cold nights lost and alone in the Bedfordshire countryside.
Had you given up hope? Did you think you were never going to see him again?
No, I wasn't going to give up until I found him. I was expecting to find him dead, really. Aren't we? And you're not.
Ulis owes his life to a charity that uses drones to find dogs that have gone missing. With a thermal imaging camera, they managed to pinpoint his position and track him down, cowering in a hedgerow next to a river. His lead had got tangled and was tying him to the spot, meaning that for 11 days he'd been eating nothing but twigs. When he was finally reunited with his very relieved owner, Ulis had lost a third of his body weight.
What did you say when you got the call to say that they'd found him?
A very naughty word.
Unrepeatable word.
An unrepeatable word.
Give us the gist.
Well, it's everything, isn't it? He's one of our gingers. He's my responsibility, and he's got a little heartbeat, and he's a living thing, isn't he? So he was waiting for us to find him.
Drone to Home is a Nottingham-based charity which relies on 3,000 volunteer drone pilots across the UK.
We searched for many, many, many dogs, over 3,000 now in nearly 5 years. And I think it's the first time I've ever jumped up for joy. And I think, not because not all of them are special, it's just I knew this dog had been missing for 11 days. And as soon as I saw that dog, I knew it had been in that position for 11 days because it had lost so much weight.
Sam is now fundraising to buy them a new drone and says she couldn't be more grateful, although perhaps not quite as grateful as Ulis looks, just to be home for his dinner. Chloe Keedy, ITV News, Bedfordshire.
He's even got his jumper on, hasn't he? That's all from us for now. Tom's here with news at 10, but from me and the Evening News team, bye-bye.